Bob Kerrigan with you here for Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson. Thank you very much for joining us for the Law Show. You can text us during the show, and we will try to get back to you at that time, if not later. And we also use those questions that come to us by text or email to formulate different subjects that we talk about here on the Law Show. So thank you very much for watching, and thank you all for your comments. We've had many comments, and old friends, people we haven't seen many for years. Received an interesting text from a deputy that I knew many, many years ago, and when I was involved in criminal defense work, which I no longer am, but it was good to hear from him. And good to hear from many of you who we have represented over the years. We depend upon referrals from our former clients and friends and fellow lawyers that know the kind of work we do. So we welcome those referrals and thank you for making them for us. Had a response from a very fine automobile dealership representative person for a luxury car line in this area. I won't say which one. But his comment was on these warranties that my general assessment that we are being bombarded by these phone calls where people tell us we need to renew our car warranties, or you're striking fear that your car warranty is going to expire and you're going to have an engine failure, you're going to have transmission failure, and you'll be left high and dry. What they don't tell you is how much they're going to charge you every month to give you this so-called protection. But his point was that these warranties that come from a reputable dealer are valuable and important, and you want them. In a new car, with a new car, you get a manufacturer's warranty, and a reputable dealer will stand behind that, as will a manufacturer. And you have many established car sellers, retailers that are not new car distributors, but are in fact major sellers, retailers of cars. If they provide a warranty when they sell you a car, that's pretty good. And if you can afford it, obviously, if it's fairly priced. So I don't want to discourage people from getting warranties. My comment was these unsolicited phone calls that drive us crazy, call us day and night with this panic message. If you don't call immediately, you're going to lose your warranty. Well, in most cases, you don't want to buy that from that person anyway, or that company. You certainly don't. But a reputable dealer's entirely different situation. So I got this note in the mail, or a brochure in the mail, and it was from the U.S. Deputy Sheriff's Association. So it kind of made me nervous when I first looked at this, because it's quite official looking. It's got a star and everything. And it's like, oh my gosh. And it's addressed to me and says, to my name, Robert Kerrigan, your help is urgently needed to get bulletproof vests to our police in these dangerous times, because essential equipment is sorely lacking due to state and local government cutbacks. I hadn't heard about any cutbacks for law enforcement, so I didn't know what they were talking about. But they needed money, and they wanted money right away because they need to get bulletproof vests. Well, we want our police officers to have them. We want our deputies in Highway Patrol to have them. It should be standard issuance. Anyway, I can't imagine a sheriff or a police department saying, well, we'd rather have a meth truck that knocks trailers down than to protect our officers with bulletproof vests and other things that we want our officers to have. So here's the other message that went with it. It says, with the radical anti-cop and defund the police movement sweeping the country, ambush cop killers on the rise, and politicians releasing thousands of criminals during the COVID pandemic, our local law enforcement officers are literally under attack. Oh my gosh, what can I do to help? Oh, send them money. So they have a picture here. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I'll hold it up and see it. But the picture is of some wacko nut with a sign that says defund the police, and another one says there's no such thing as a good cop. Some idiot posted that sign, so they took a picture of it. And then the defund the police. Let me explain this defund the police thing. My personal view is it was a dirty trick played by politicians, and they got some crazy wacko left-winger to agree that it was a good idea. No rational human being in this country that understands anything would ever defund our police department, period. Ashley Moody, as our Attorney General, recorded a commercial and accused President Biden of proposing to defund the police when he had specifically, categorically, and unequivocally said he would not do that. Police have to be properly funded. So it's just nonsense. But it does raise the possibility that you can raise money with this plan, okay? So I decided to look into this outfit, the U.S. Deputy Sheriff's Association, and there's something that you all can use if you want to. I like it. It's called the Charity Navigator. So when these organizations ask for money from you to help fight some evil that they claim they need your money given to them so they can help fight the evil, again, it's all based underlying on fear that we're going to help you because we're going to protect our police. Well, why do you want to protect the police? Because the police are protecting you. So if you give us money, we'll buy the equipment that governments have cut back and aren't giving our police and aren't supporting our police. But you can help. It's a lot like Banyan did when he raised all the money to build the wall. Problem was they misappropriated the money. So they depended on the fear that people have to give them money, claiming that they're going to do something that's going to be beneficial to protect you. So I looked at Charity Navigator, and I wanted to find out a little bit about how this outfit operates. This is the United States Deputy Sheriff's Association. So we look at what are their operating expenses? How much is actually going to help for the projects they say they're doing? And I have no doubt that some of the money goes to buy a bulletproof vest. I don't think there's any question. There's probably some money that goes there. The question is how much of your money is going to go there. So let me just tell you what their fundraising expenses are. This is a Charity Navigator. And this is a nonpartisan, independent, neutral organization that assesses all charitable organizations. So what would you guess was their fundraising expense? The people who come up with this great brochure that shows pictures of nuts with signs saying defund the police and you send us money and we'll fight these evil people who are trying to defund the police. Who comes up with all this creative stuff to appeal to your fear so that you'll write a big check to them, okay? You know how much their fundraising expenses are? You send $1, they keep 66 cents because they raised the money. 66 cents out of $1, they keep 66.5%, actually, okay? They have their program expenses are 23%, or 27%, sorry, and 66% is on fundraising expenses. And then they have all of the costs of overhead that are incurred to operate this outfit, okay? So their overall score rating is out of 100. That's the best score you can get. Their rating is 26.93, okay? So let me just say, well, what about some other charities? We've got a lot of charities that call us, or these people don't actually call. A lot of these really good charities don't call. So I looked at one that we all know about, most of us know about, Mercy Ships. I really like them. I think they do wonderful things for people. And by the way, let me go back to this United States Sheriff's Association and show you there's a checklist here that shows what they don't have, okay? Do they have an independent voting board? No. So who governs them? Who controls them? It's whoever the executives are that run the company. Okay? Not saying they're dishonest or whatever, because this is all disclosed. You could find out about this. It's just that if you read these solicitations that are so alarming, that to think that we don't have enough money to provide bulletproof vests for our officers is alarming. And indeed it is. But any law enforcement agency that doesn't prioritize that has some serious internal problems. And that is protecting the officers, men and women, exposed to danger. Number one, protecting them in every conceivable way we can. And then secondarily, you get all this fancy equipment that knocks down doors and runs over meth trailers and things like that. But number one is to protect the officers, and that's what should be done. So Charity Navigator, I'm now looking at Mercy Ships, and they have a very high score across the board. But let me just look at their percentages that were published. And we have fundraising expenses 6.8%. So only 6.8% of the money they raise goes to the people who are raising the money. The rest goes to the operation of the charity, and that is a wonderful charity. And I'm going to tell you about one that you probably never heard of before. Many of you probably haven't heard of it before. It's called Brothers Brother Foundation. And the reason I know about this company, or this charitable organization, is because many, many years ago, when they had the terrible problem in Bosnia, and they had a winter crisis where people were in desperate shape, we sponsored a program where we collected, tons and tons of clothing, and we sent it to Bosnia. And we tried to find a charitable organization that would get all of this equipment and clothing to the people that needed it without a lot of costs and expenses. They did it for us for nothing to disseminate all this. So it's Brothers Brother, and if you look at their rating, they have 5 stars. Okay, the highest possible rating, nearly the highest possible rating. Their overhead expenses, administrative expenses, just 1%. Fundraising expenses, 0.2%. That's Brothers Foundation. But it just takes a lot of work to dig into this and try to figure out, okay, who's scamming who here? Who's charging tons and tons of money to raise money to keep the money themselves, or the fundraisers to keep the money themselves? Who's got the highest administrative expenses? Who has the best rating? All of this is available through Charity Navigator. My point is this: don't send money to these people. Don't send money to anybody other than your local church. We'll talk about that eventually, or synagogue, or place where you worship, and you see that money being used locally that helps the community. That's fine. But to respond to this based upon the fear that they create in making you give a contribution is just bad. Bob Kerrigan for Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson. You're watching The Law Show, and thank you very much for doing so.
For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida. For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Welcome back to The Law Show. Bob Kerrigan with you. We're here every Sunday morning at this time, and thank you very much for watching. You can text us any question that you want. If we handle that kind of issue, we'll respond and try to answer it. We can't provide information on an individual case. For example, if you say, listen, I was in a wreck and this person ran into me and now I'm trying to figure out how much my case is worth. We can't do that unless we're retained as lawyers to represent you. But we can answer general questions about what happens in an automobile accident case, what happens if you're in an airline crash situation, what happens if you're in a train wreck, or not that common anymore, but we've had those through the years, or some other kinds of injury. But today I want to talk a little bit about medical malpractice and what it is and what it is not. The fight for patients' rights in a hospital and doctor setting, it takes place every year in the legislature. And the tug of war is between satisfaction for a patient who has been hurt or someone who's lost a loved one because of the negligence of the healthcare provider versus the healthcare provider being solvent, staying in business, and providing health care for the community. It's a balance. We can't put healthcare providers out of business. We need our hospitals and we need our doctors. My experience over the years has been that fully 97%, 98% maybe, of physicians are good people, men and women, and they are in that work to help people. Now, there's some bad apples, but most people say there are more bad lawyers than bad doctors. But in any event, they're in that business, in that profession rather, to help people. And nurses are our frontline health care givers and are largely revered, especially, during something like COVID-19, where people go to work every day and risk their lives to help others. It is just an admirable situation. There are, unfortunately, mistakes made in medicine. And I'll give you an example of something that is unrelated to medicine. You get in your car and you are driving someplace and you have a momentary inattention for whatever reason. The kids were hollering in the back seat, or you dropped something and you turned away to look for it, or whatever. But you run into somebody and you cause an accident and you hurt somebody. You didn't intend to hurt them. The last thing you do, and you feel terrible about it, awful, and you wish it hadn't happened, and the other person's hurt, and you want to do the right thing, and so you probably have purchased insurance. And so that insurance comes into play and is provided to the person who's been hurt, and the case is resolved, or the issue is resolved. You feel bad about it. They obviously are not pleased that they've been in an accident which wasn't their fault, but it works out. I mean, we as a civil society, we don't get out of the car and start fighting each other, okay? We have an orderly way to do it, and lawyers have a role in that, as do other people that are involved in the process. So what happens in a hospital setting where a physician makes a mistake? They thought the patient had such and such, and the patient didn't have that. The patient had something entirely different, and they actually confused the patients. In fact, if you look at the chart, you can see they're thinking they're dealing with a different patient. These physicians are under tremendous pressure. Many of them are, and the good ones work very hard, very hard. I'll say this as an aside too. In my experience now, over 40 years, we only see complaints on a handful of physicians. We don't see complaints on most of the doctors in a hospital or whatever. In fact, it's usually the same doctors over and over again. We had one doctor many years ago, and I think we had 12 or 13 claims against this physician. So it's not that common to have malpractice committed by a physician. And they say that many times malpractice occurs, but that they make some remedial efforts and they get on top of it right away. And yes, the patient didn't do as well, or yes, the patient had a mistake, but it's worked out. And so most of these things do not end up in court. And most of these things do not end up with lawyers. But where you have, for example, a very bad situation where there is a paralysis or a death or some other catastrophic injury to the patient, especially a young person or a baby, in those cases, the physician that made the mistake or the hospital that made the mistake has insurance. And that insurance comes into play just like in an automobile accident. And there are discussions or negotiations about that insurance so that a claim that is made can be resolved in a way that the physician is not, I'm not saying they're happy about it, but they don't want their patients to be hurt. These doctors are not in this work for anything other than, I mean, most of them, the vast majority are physicians because they care about people. They've worked very hard to get where they are. I mean, the rigorous academic requirements for a physician and the hours and hours they work with poor sleep for years, they just work like dogs 16, 18 hours a day. So they've worked hard. They don't want to hurt somebody, period, okay? But when someone's hurt, our system allows for that hurt person, especially if there is a catastrophic injury, to be compensated so that the future medical expenses, their loss of wages, their inability to do the things in their life that they would have done if it wasn't for the mistake that was made, can be redressed in a way in which the patient is reasonably compensated, and that's the goal, reasonable compensation for what they've been through. So that's the system that we have. Now, you can get to the point where the parties can't agree. You have a person that's paralyzed and they claim that their inability to do a particular kind of work. Let's say you have a professional piano player who has lost 3 fingers through no fault of their own. It was a misdiagnosis of something that resulted in the amputation of their fingers. It's a rare kind of unusual thing to have happen, of course, but if that was the case and they were a professional piano player, you can see that their income would be adversely affected. And so that's an element of compensation. Sometimes the people who insure these physicians, it's not the physicians themselves. The physicians themselves would say, get this settled. That's why I buy insurance. Get it settled and let's move on. I want these people taken care of. Okay, that's the typical attitude of the physician. However, the people writing the check are the insurance people. And for them, it's a business. It's a business. They have to decide, if we pay this claim, this is very simplistic, but if we pay this claim, we'll have less money to pay for our executives and less money to pay in dividends to our stockholders. So our goal is to pay as little as we can pay. The physician, however, is saying, I want you to pay them a reasonable level of compensation. So the lawyer that represents the injured party says to the insurance company, come on, that's not reasonable. That's not fair. That's way less than you'd want if you were injured in the situation. Way less. So you've got to pay more. So there's negotiations. There's mediation. We've talked about that on the law show where they try to settle these claims. And then if it doesn't settle and you can't reach an agreement that's satisfactory to everybody, then a lawsuit is filed. And then the entity or the people making the decision about what is fair are a local jury. They hear all the evidence. They hear the physician's side. They hear the claimant's side, the person that's been injured. They hear the instructions from the judge. They study the evidence, and they make a decision that they think is fair. And I want to say this about jurors. For those of you who've been on jury duty, you know what I'm saying is true, okay? The jurors are very reliable and conscientious. They give up time from their families. Many times they give up compensation because they're not being paid. It's a small amount that they get for jury duty. They're there for a week, 2 weeks. I've had them longer than that, 3 weeks, away from their families. It's stressful. They're trying to do the right thing. They're responding to jury duty because it's their civic duty, just like military service. Okay? They're responding because it's their duty. And they're doing the very best they can. So I get put off when I hear the insurance, and this all comes from insurance companies. Insurance companies fuel these rumors. Oh, this person, it's a lottery, and you go to a jury trial and they give away money. I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen anybody give away money. They don't do that. Jurors don't give away money. They're trying to figure out what the best result could be, and sometimes they don't rule for the person who's been injured. That can happen. Sometimes they rule for the doctor, sometimes they rule for the hospital, but they do what they think is right. And for those of you who've been on jury duty, you know what I'm saying is true. But the insurance company loves putting out on the street, in the media, everything that this is a lottery, the system doesn't work. It bashes the system because they don't want juries to make determinations that are unfavorable to their bottom line. That's the way it works. And that's the jury trial process. The case is presented to the jury. It's presented to the jury because the parties were unable to settle it, though both sides may well have tried very hard to settle it. Unable to settle it, so it has to go to a jury trial. Trial concludes with the jury returning a verdict. And the verdict is either for the healthcare provider or for the claimant. And there's an amount of money that's stated on the jury form. And in Florida, we have 6 jurors in Florida in a civil case in the state court system, not talking about the federal court system, state court system. And the jury has to be unanimous. You have 6 people from the community, never knew each other before. They're going to sit down and they're going to talk and they're going to sort through the evidence and they're going to do what they think is right. And these are people, your friends, your neighbors, and they showed up for jury duty, okay? They came and they sacrificed to be on that jury. And then they have to read in the paper how they're bashed, how the insurance companies are critical of juries and act like they give away money that's not deserved or owing. None of which is true, but it's been fairly successful creating distrust in our system, just like creating distrust in our election system. When you create distrust in our institutions, in our juries, in our courts, in our elections, you're doing something unpatriotic. That is not what patriots do. We support the institutions of government. We support our government. We support our democracy. We support our elections. And we support the decisions that jurors make when they've sacrificed to be there, to listen to the evidence, and to do what they think is right. So our great system goes on. It goes on because people show up for jury duty. So you hear somebody bashing jury duty, jury service, ask them, have you ever shown up? Or do you call in sick or say it's inconvenient or you're too much of a big shot? Discount it for what it's worth because jury duty is a critical contribution to our community. Thank you. Bob Kerrigan for The Law Show. We'll be back.
For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida. For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida. Welcome back to The Law Show. I'm Mike McLeod, and I'll be with you for the next couple of segments of the show this morning. The law firm Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson sponsors the law show. We have offices across Northwest Florida. We limit our practice to helping people who've been seriously injured in accidents and representing the families who have lost loved ones in accidents through no fault of their own. We've been around for a long time, over 40 years. Bob Kerrigan and George Estes started the law firm back in the 1970s. Bill Rankin, myself, Randy Thompson joined the firm, and we've been together for a long time, just limiting what we do only to cases that involve serious injury. We've hosted the law show for almost all of those years, and we invite you to text us with your questions if you have them today. You can text us at 850-444-4444, all fours. We also like to advise you that's our main number. So if you want to call the law firm any day of the week, you can reach us at that number. Our website that has a lot of information about all of us and about the law firm is Kerrigan.com. It's on the screen there. And my email address is mike.mcleod@Kerrigan.com. You can email me a comment or question about the show this morning. So I first want to talk about a little bit about how to select a personal injury lawyer. And I think this applies to lawyers who do all sorts of work, but particularly accidental injury lawyers, because there's so much advertising in the market today from those types of lawyers. And that's the type of law we practice. So, you know, if you ride through town, if you ride through Northwest Florida, you're going to see predominantly billboards, that a lot of them from personal injury lawyers, accidental injury lawyers. If you flip on your television set, you're going to see advertising from a lot of personal injury lawyers. Personal injury lawyers market directly to people through those types of media. You know, years ago when the phone book was still kind of a big deal, the Yellow Pages was, I'll bet 25% of the Yellow Page ad were from personal injury attorneys. So the question is, are those the best ways for you or your family to pick a lawyer to represent you in a serious injury case? And we have billboards. We have a phone number that's an easy phone number to remember. We love our phone number. It's easy for folks to call us and remember. You just start punching forward till we answer the phone. But is that really the best way to pick a lawyer in a matter that's of really critical importance to you? And I suggest that it's not. So how do you, in a time when you really need help dealing with insurance companies and things that you're not familiar with, how do you level the playing field against insurance companies by picking the right lawyer? And I suggest that there are some objective things that you can look at and consider to make sure you pick the right lawyer. So by objective, I mean things that you can aren't subject to interpretation. Like you may see an ad where a lawyer says, well, I'm going to fight for you, or we'll holding up the scales of justice. Here's the scales of justice with me this morning. Well, but does that really tell you something about the lawyer's history in an objective sort of way? And I think it does not. So let's talk about some objective measures that will indicate to you this is a lawyer who can really help me. And the first thing is board certification. So in Florida, the Florida Bar allows lawyers to indicate to the public that they are board certified in certain areas only if those lawyers have met the criteria to present to the public that they're board certified lawyers. We are board certified civil trial lawyers at our firm. All of the practicing lawyers are board certified civil trial lawyers. which means they have met peer review. Other lawyers have recommended them for board certification. Also, judges who they have practiced in front of have recommended them for board certification. And then a lawyer has to take a very specific, specialized test just in this field and pass it in order to announce to the public that they're board certified. So that is an objective measure that the lawyer has taken, not just gone to law school, passed the bar exam, but also become board certified in a very, very detailed and somewhat strenuous process. Fewer than a few percentage points of lawyers in Florida are board certified civil trial lawyers. So board certification is an objective measure. Also, how long has the lawyer or law firm practiced in this area? That's a number that's not subject to interpretation. Our firm's been here for 40 years. Why is that helpful? Because lawyers who live here and work here and practice here know the legal community, know the atmosphere in the courthouse, know the atmosphere for jury verdicts, know the judiciary here, and that is a tremendous benefit for a person who's going to have somebody represent them at the courthouse and with other lawyers on the other side of the case. I think it's very helpful for my clients to know that if I tell a defense lawyer X, Y, or Z, by my reputation, the other lawyer's going to know that that's accurate and true. And I think that's a real benefit for our clients when they consider hiring our firm. And that's an objective measure. The other thing I think is, what are the lawyers' verdicts and settlements historically? So years ago, the Florida Bar wouldn't allow lawyers to publicize through advertising what their verdicts and settlements were. But those days have changed and those restrictions have gone away. And so now a person who is thinking about hiring a personal injury lawyer can ask, well, what are your verdicts and settlements? And the easiest way to find them in our case is to go to our website, Kerrigan.com, and there's very easy to find. You just click on verdicts and settlements, and there's a long list of verdicts and settlements that our firm has obtained over many years, and that's something that's not subject to opinion or interpretation. Those are facts. And so verdicts and settlements are available now. Client reviews. Now in the social media age, lawyers can publicize, can ask clients to write a review. Clients can write reviews, positive and negative, on their own, and those are available. So also on our website, again, it's Kerrigan.com, you can go to our, what do our clients say about us? And we put them, they're all on there. And you can read what individual clients have said at the conclusion of their case about all the lawyers with the firm. So these are all objective things that you can test when you decide who's going to represent me in a case. You know, I think it's kind of interesting when you go to the grocery store, and you'll see people pick up a product, like it could be a bottle of ketchup, and reading the label to see, well, what's in this product, what's in this, and kind of scrutinizing what kind of salad dressing am I going to get, or what are the fat calories in this. And people scrutinize these products that you pick anywhere. It's so readily available today, but are somewhat more careless perhaps about picking an attorney to represent them in a matter that is of real great importance, that affects their livelihood, their medical expenses, their medical bills, recovering from an accident that wasn't their fault. So I think these are all things that a person can look at and scrutinize. So the other thing is, and this is the last thing I think, I don't think it's a mistake to meet with several lawyers. If you have a really significant case where you have serious injuries, then it's certainly, I think, wise to meet with more than one lawyer and compare, because I think over a meeting, even a 30-minute meeting, face to face, it's harder now during the COVID age, but people can mask up and we can do Zoom meetings. And I just think you can get a feel for connection to a lawyer through a face-to-face meeting. And I think it's wise in many significant cases to meet with more than one lawyer. So it's just not something that you willy-nilly drive past a billboard and just pick somebody out and drive on. The other thing is law firms have more than one lawyer in them. And so we think it's very important for you to know what lawyer in the firm is going to represent me. Am I calling a law firm that has a big number of lawyers and I'm going to get whoever they pick for me? That's not necessarily the way I would want to be represented in a matter that I'm counting on this one person to do a good job for me. All right, so the next part of the show and into the next segment, we're going to get back to our mailbag and try and answer some questions from viewers over the next few minutes. And the first one comes from someone who says, what happens if both parties to an accident have the same insurance company? So it's really pretty common. And a lot of the mainstream common insurance companies, Allstate, State Farm, Progressive, Geico, we see those names a lot. And it's really very common for a car wreck between two vehicles, two drivers, for those two people to have the same insurance company. And it does seem like, I think, well, whose side is my insurance company on when they're on both sides of the case? So in the typical accident, if you're injured in the accident, you would look to your own insurance company for payment of your medical bills and lost wages, even if the other guy's at fault, under your personal injury protection coverage. And your insurance company will assign a claims handler, an adjuster, to handle your case with your own insurance company. And so that adjuster will deal with your PIP payments for your medical bills and lost wages. And if you have coverage called uninsured motorist coverage, you may have an additional claim against your own policy, and you may deal with that same adjuster for your company or a different insurance adjuster for your own company. Then on the other side of the case, the car that hits you, even though it's the same insurance company, will assign a separate and distinct insurance claims handler for your claim against the other driver. And those two insurance adjusters with the same company are not to communicate with each other. The regulations require that they not communicate unless you give them permission to do that. So there should be a real line of communicating between those two adjusters. It does happen really sort of often. I've got some more questions to get to in the next segment. We're going to take a quick break though first. Again, the Law Show is brought to you by the law firm Kerrigan, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson. We handle accidental injury and wrongful death cases across Northwest Florida. We're proud to host the Law Show every Sunday morning at this time. And I'll be back again with more of your questions in just a minute.
For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community.
Kerrigan, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
For over 30 years, we've been part of this great community.
Kerrigan, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida. Welcome back to the Law Show on this Sunday morning. We're going to go back to our mailbag, question bag, and answer some questions from viewers in this final segment of the show. Again, this is the Law Show brought to you by the law firm Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson. Our firm specializes and has for many, many years in representing people who are seriously injured in accidents. We represent families who have lost loved ones in accidents that were not their fault. We've done it for over 40 years. And we've hosted the Law Show over many, many years, and appreciate folks watching, and hope this is an opportunity where we can provide helpful information to the community. Our website is Kerrigan.com. You can find a lot of information about the law firm, the history of the law firm, and individual information about each of the partners in the law firm. All of the lawyers with Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson are partners in the law firm. All have a tremendous amount of experience representing people in personal injury cases, trying cases, obtaining verdicts and settlements to help people who are injured, who have economic losses, medical expense losses, and accidents that were not their fault. And we've limited our law practice just to those cases. And lawyers do a lot of other great things for people, estate planning, family law, divorces, criminal defense work, all sorts of things. But we have, almost from the inception of our firm, decided years and years ago that we just wanted to do this particular work, and we wanted to be specialists. And all of the lawyers who practice and handle cases here at the law firm are board certified civil trial lawyers. And a very small percent of the Florida lawyers are board certified at all, and certainly in this area of law. My name is Mike McLeod. My email address is on the screen now. It's mike.mcleod@kerrigan.com. You can send me an email, a question to me at that address. We'll answer it on the TV show, or I'll reply to your email. Again, it's mike.mcleod@kerrigan.com, or you can text us at our main number, 850-444-4444. That number is answered also if you call that number throughout the week, and actually 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we can be reached at that number. So let's answer a few more questions that have come in over the last week or two. The first question is, how much does it cost to hire a lawyer in a personal injury case in Florida? So, and we've talked about this before, lawyers who do this sort of work and who handle these types of cases charge what is called a contingency fee. And the fee is contingent upon a successful outcome. So all those other types of things that lawyers do, criminal defense work, divorces, adoptions, estate planning, business issues, lawyers typically charge either a fixed fee ahead of time or an hourly fee, depending on how much time is involved in the matter. In personal injury cases, the contingency fee allows someone who may have modest means or who does not want to pay a lawyer up front, whether the case is successful or not, to hire the best lawyers they can hire. And the fee is typically a third of the recovery, dependent, again, on a successful outcome in the case. So if a person comes into our office who's been seriously injured in an accident, we will put the full force of our firm, and we have very talented staff who most of them have done this work and who have worked for us for a long period of time. We will put that group of talented people and lawyers forward to assist you to make sure you are treated fairly as a result of an injury resulting from an accident that was not your fault. And the fee is not paid up front. The fee is not paid at all unless there's a successful outcome. And so this allows the client to hire the best lawyers they can hire and not to pay unless there's a successful outcome in the case. And then again, also, there are certain expenses that go along with pursuing a serious injury case. And those expenses can typically be the cost of acquiring your medical records. Physicians and hospitals charge for the copying of records when the client needs them or when the lawyer representing a client needs them. So we pay all of those charges as the case goes along. Sometimes when we get records for the at-fault driver, what kind of driving record does this person have? We do a lot of research into, well, how is this person who caused this accident driven in the past? So we get their driving record. We get a lot of history and information on the person who caused the accident. That's available. Sometimes we hire experts who have specific training in certain aspects of how a case happened, not necessarily always an automobile accident, but other types of accidents. And then sometimes we will meet with a client's treating physician in order to have the doctor project how is this person going to do after the case is over. What's this injury? How is this injury going to affect them as they go forward in life? And so doctors charge for those conferences and for their time for providing this helpful information that helps us put forward our client's case. So the contingency fee is one that's not paid unless there's a successful outcome. The costs that we incur pursuing those cases, the things that those examples that I've just given, are not charged to the client at all unless there's a successful outcome. So what do lawyers like about the contingency fee? If a lawyer is talented and able to get a very positive outcome in the case, the lawyer is going to be compensated for the work that he or she does. And what do the clients like about the contingency fee? I can hire the best lawyers I can find, and I don't have to pay them anything unless they're successful in the case. And it opens the courthouse door and evens the odds against insurance companies. Typically, it's an insurance company who have plenty of lawyers, plenty of employees, who are all experienced in handling these cases. So it evens the odds for people that will find it hard to risk funds up front to make sure they are fairly compensated in an accident. All right, so next question was, what if the driver who hit me was drinking? So let's talk a little bit about drunk driver accidents. If a driver in another vehicle runs a stop sign, runs a red light, the most common accident really is a rear end collision. It's just human nature. We get distracted by different things. Cell phones are, of course, a big problem. But drivers get distracted, so it's very common for a person to come to see us and have significant neck or back problems as a result of a real rear end collision. So if a drunk driver rear ends you, it doesn't mean that they're more responsible. If a car rear ends you, that driver is negligent in most cases and responsible for your damages. But if the driver rear ends you and is intoxicated, then the case sometimes takes on different qualities. One, insurance companies that insure drunk drivers are, in our experience, more alerted to the fact that this is a case where a jury may award more money because our insured was intoxicated than if the insured just looked down to try and pick up a pen that was dropped or something that was dropped, because the fault part of the case is more aggravated. And we know historically that juries in Northwest Florida, and I'm sure juries everywhere, tend to compensate people that are injured with the same injury in a more substantial way because the at-fault driver was so careless as to drive while drinking. And so we think that cases where the at-fault driver was intoxicated result in bigger damages, even though the damages are the same as mom or pop who causes an accident inadvertently by running a red light. The second kind of difference that I would mention about drunk driver accidents is that in the typical case, a person injured in an accident has the right to be compensated for their compensatory damages in just the average case. And compensatory damages are lawful damages in Florida that are aimed to compensate the injured person and to compensate them for their lost wages, their medical expenses. These are bills that they have to make the injured person whole. And in Florida, in an automobile accident, if you have a permanent injury, you're entitled to be compensated for intangible type damages, for pain and suffering, loss of the ability to do the things that you could do and enjoy the things that you could do before the accident. But these are all damages to compensate the injured person. In Florida, if the at-fault driver is intoxicated to the extent that their normal faculties are impaired, the injured person also has a right to claim not just compensatory damages, but punitive damages. And punitive damages are not necessarily measured by, well, what happened to the injured party, but what is the bad conduct of the wrongdoing party? How bad was the person intoxicated? Is this the second or third DUI that the at-fault driver had? So in Florida, if the at-fault driver is intoxicated, then the injured person has the ability to recover not just compensatory damages, but punitive damages, damages that are measured to punish the at-fault wrongdoing driver. There are some procedural steps that have to be taken by your lawyer, if you've hired a lawyer, before you can trigger punitive damages. And just basically, those things are you have to get into the record the evidence that this person was intoxicated or this person's conduct was so reckless as to be tremendously reckless. And then you have to ask the court to allow you to amend your complaint to seek punitive damages. So there are some differences in cases that lawyers who do this can trigger punitive damages to punish the wrongdoer. We'll have some more questions answered next week. I've run out of time for this segment in the show. I'm Mike McLeod. This is The Law Show, brought to you by Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson. And we'll be back again next week.